So in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 11, notice is hereby given that the Bolton Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on Monday, September 24th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the Houghton Building, 697 Main Street, Bolton, Mass. To hear and act upon the application of Still River Road Development LLC into Shaney's and Farrell PC. The applicant is seeking a comprehensive permit for a proposed housing development to be located in Bolton residential zoning district on Still River Road, identified on Assessors Map 8B as parcel 32, 6.68 acres. The applicant is seeking a comprehensive permit to construct 8 units of home ownership housing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40B. The development will consist of 4 2-unit duplex-style buildings located on 2 lots, each containing 2 duplex buildings. In conformance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, the development will contain 2 affordable units. The application and plans are available for review at Town Clerk's office in the Town Hall, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 9 a.m. to 2:30, Tuesday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on the proposed plan should appear at the time and place designated. So, with that, we'll just have a couple ground rules. Not everyone has been involved with the 40B before, so with the 40B process, the Zoning Board of Appeals is the designated party to hear the application. So presentations will be made to the board by a variety of presenters. I'll identify those later. So the ZBA will respond to and ask questions of the individual presenters. We'll also open up question and answers to the audience. So for audience questions and comments, please identify yourself and your town address. This is important. If you're an active town volunteer or board member, please inform the ZBA whether you're speaking on behalf of yourself or you're representing the town board or body that you work for. Address your questions and comments to the ZBA directly. We don't want to get back and forth between the presenter and the audience. We want to keep control of the dialogue, and it's a good process to follow. The ZBA will be soliciting a review and support from town boards and departments as part of the 40B process. So all the documentation we have here, we have to make sure we get it out to conservation, to the fire department, to police department, board of health and whatnot, and ask for their technical feedback. Then they'll come and present that back to us. So and we'll have other meetings that will post and continue as the process moves along. So any questions about the ground rules? No? Okay, so introduction. We have a 5-board zoning board of appeals. Kay Stoner, Brad Reed, myself, Gerard Ahern, Andy Kitchen, and sorry, Brian Holmes. I don't know why I forget. So anyway, so we'll be tasked with the 40B process. Depending on how many meetings it takes, there's an opportunity or sometimes where the board were volunteers, so our work schedule and family life schedule sometimes override. So if a member is not available, as long as we have a quorum, we'll participate in hearings, and we'll make provisions for that member to catch up to speed on whatever was missed, either through meeting notes or a review of the draft, so that we have 5 members to vote when the process ends. That's us. Then we have our town planner, Erica Hirate. Erica is the town planner, but she's also the ZBA's planning administrator. So she'll be a valuable resource to the town and to the ZBA. We also have here Joseph Pesnola, right? So Joseph is with Hancock Associates, and as part of the 40B process, the towns are encouraged or allowed to get a grant that allows us to use a designated resource from Mass Housing Partnership, and they work as a facilitator in some respect. They've had 40B background, and they just help the town, the board, and the different groups that will come in front of us, sort of work through the process. So I'll have Joe give a little background dialogue of, you know, what he's done, you know, what he envisions his role here, and we'll move on after that. We'll also have a peer review technical consultant. So right now we have 2 proposals that we're looking at. We've asked for some follow-up questions. We'll potentially either use the firm of Niche Engineering or a company called Horsley Witten Group. Both we've had exposure to in the past on 40Bs. They'll do the engineering peer review, and they're selected by the ZBA, but I believe they're funded through the application fees of from the applicant. And then we'll have the applicant. So the applicant is, I believe, Still River Development LLC, the owner being C. David Russell, and the law firm assisting is, I believe we'll have 1 or 2 attorneys, one Doug Deschenys and Melissa Robbins, and they're from the firm of Deschenys and Farrell, PC. And I believe their civil engineering resource will be Duchamp and Dillis Civil Design Group. So that's sort of the basic introductions and sort of how well the people you'll see involved in the process. Any questions? There's a question in the back.
Could you just speak a little louder?
Okay,
Thanks.
we'll do that.
Also, there's some people that are standing. We still do have 2 empty seats over here. I'd like to get as many people in the room as possible. And if need be, we could pull some of these chairs back out.
Yeah. And there are 4 more chairs in there if we need to pull out, and we can put them over, maybe not necessarily in front of the camera, but find some space.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if voices do tend to fade, just a wave in the back, and we'll certainly, you know, speak up louder. Okay, so with that sort of outline, one other thing we'll do, but it'll be probably toward the end of this meeting, is whenever we have a 40B, we also schedule a site walk. We're not always familiar with the property where the project's going to be proposed, so we want to get out there and see the conditions with our technical consultants and whatnot, so that, you know, we get an idea of, you know, we know that if there's wetlands, we know if there's, you know, traffic issues. You know, we can just start to see what we're running into and make sure we cover the bases. So we will schedule a site
Excuse me,
walk.
Mr. Chairman, will that site walk be open to the public?
They generally, they're not, right? They're open to the board and to any of the, protected by, but
Because it's not technically a public meeting, it's just a site visit, there's no deliberation during that site visit.
right, but do other town boards with the 40B, in the past, I think we had other
Oh, you have
board
other
members. Yes, we have
boards.
other
Yes,
boards, so
yes.
it's not open to the public, but it's open to other boards, other than potentially people that may not be here tonight, because I don't know if all boards are represented.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just a question, we did the original site walk when the first house
Who's
was
speaking?
proposed? Oh, sorry.
I can't see. Speak, say your name and.
Marcy Silver on 438 Still River Road.
Yeah, okay,
I just had a question, we did the original site walk when the first house was proposed with the builder. He took us around that site, so I just was wondering why this new one wouldn't be open to the public as the last one was.
Well, we weren't involved, I haven't been involved in any sidewalk, so I don't know first versus last.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was with the builder, that could have been a courtesy of that particular builder.
Oh, so it's a new builder?
No, I'm just saying that this site visit is in regards to the ZBA and their application, so they're a town board. So the public are not typically part of those site visits as part of a town board. It sounds like this was a site visit with just the builder, so that might have been a courtesy of that particular builder at the time.
For this same lot, is what you
Yeah,
said?
yeah.
Okay.
So if, I mean, yeah, to the extent there's, you know, abutters that have an interest, and the applicant is here, we can ask them to, you know, make whatever is available, as long as it is reasonable, so. Okay, so with that being said, our first presentation is from Joe Pesnola. And so Joe is our 40B advisor, and so just a brief overview of what his background is and what he thinks he's going to do to help us here.
Good evening, everybody. I am an advisor to the board, as the chairman said, a facilitator. Mass Housing Partnership is a housing advocacy group, and also provides technical assistance to zoning boards all over the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They do this through a grant, so the grant pays for my services to be here throughout the process to help the board through what can be complex applications in comparison to what the zoning board usually hears, which are variances and special permits and fairly small applications. Something like this is usually with the planning board or the board of selectmen. So in these cases where ZBA is put in this role, I can be here to help. My background, I'm a civil engineer by trade. I've been working in that field for 30 years. But I also spent 20 years on the Hudson Zoning Board of Appeals next door, where we saw 6 40Bs over my tenure, all sizes, as small as one Habitat for Humanity house and as big as 300 units. So I really got quite this perspective from that angle. Add that to what I do for my day job, and I guess rose to the point of having expertise enough for Mass Housing Partnership to bring me on to their group of consultants that do this for the board. So what is Chapter 40B, for those of you that don't know? It was enacted in 1969. It's sometimes called the anti-snob zoning law. And essentially what it did was, back in '69, when zoning was fairly new in Massachusetts, and towns were cutting their teeth on what they wanted to be, what they felt they should be, and they were enacting zoning. Many of the urban centers felt that they were taking the lion's share of providing affordable housing throughout the Commonwealth, and that towns were zoning themselves out of any of that support or help in that need within the Commonwealth. So they enacted Chapter 40B, and what it basically says is that if a community has less than 10% of their housing stock deemed affordable, and affordable has to have some kind of a deed restriction, some kind of a permanent mechanism for its affordability, and it needs to be affordable to a prescribed group, and I'll go over that a little bit. If they're less than 10%, then an applicant can come forward to the zoning board with an application for what's known as a comprehensive permit, in which all of the local bylaws, regulations, and ordinances sit with the ZBA to hear the application and to vote to either approve it or deny it. With that, the applicant can ask for waivers from those local requirements. And the biggest one is zoning. So we can do multifamily. We can ask to do multifamily in a single-family residential, which is the big one here. Dimensional setbacks, local, beyond zoning, local wetlands regulations, local Board of Health regulations. So all of the review of all of those regulations, those requested waivers sit here within this process. It does not get the applicant out of complying with the state requirements of Title V or the Wetlands Protection Act. Those are separate and distinct, and they will have to go to Board of Health and Conservation under those. But all the local requirements come here. The board's job within this is to balance the need for affordable housing and local concerns. And the local concerns are defined by these local bylaws and regulations that they're maybe asking for waivers from. The need for affordable housing is defined by that 10%. So there's because you're under 10%, I think somewhere around 6, the need is there. So now the board has to then balance these local concerns and granting waivers from those regulations to help overcome that need to get that number closer to 10%. What does an applicant have to do to bring an application here? They need 3 things. First, they need what's known as a project eligibility letter from the state, which the first step before they came here, they went to the state and asked for that letter. There's a review by the state with regards to some design criteria. There's some financial review, and the state grants that project eligibility letter. The second is they need to have site control. They either need to own the site or have it under a purchase and sale agreement. And that extends to any easements they need, anything they need to show control of that land. And the third and last thing is they need to be what's known as a limited dividend organization. And what that means is they need to promise to limit their profit to 20% of the total project cost. So the state's thinking there is that they knew there was going to be a relaxation of some of the local requirements, maybe higher densities, and they didn't want it to be unfettered and out of control, so they said we're going to limit the developer's profit. They do that through signing a regulatory agreement between the applicant and the state, and there is a cost certification process that happens at the end of the project, in which they need to have an accountant submit a full accounting of all of their project costs and all of the revenues, and certify that they are under that 20%. The state has a review process for that to bless it and say that we agree with the methodologies and the numbers that are there. If it's found that the profit is higher than 20%, the windfall, the extra, gets returned to the community for use in creating affordable housing. So what I hope to do as an advisor to the board through this process is be here at the meetings to answer any questions they may have, to help them guide through the setting of the agendas and topics so that it's as organized as it can be and methodical as it can be, and then at the end to help them hopefully craft a decision with conditions that address those local concerns to the greatest degree possible, while balancing that test of the need for affordable housing versus the local concerns. So that's a very broad-based overview of 40B. I'll be here to answer questions again for the board, and as the board sees fit for the audience with regard to the process. I'm here to help.
So one question, so in the past 40Bs with regard to the conditions, I think it's important for the audience. So while we worked on many conditions, I believe there's the requirement that the conditions can't be so significant or severe that they make the project uneconomic to the developer as a way to sort of shut out the project. So, just wanted to clarify, or a point of, order that, we'll work on conditions most likely because it's, give and take as far as the collaborative process we've seen, but we're aware that, it's not like you can be crafty and say, we're gonna make this condition because it'll make it,
Right. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as the decision that the board has to make, they have 3 choices. They can approve it, they can approve it with conditions, or they can deny. I've never seen one approved as is with no conditions. Approval with conditions is the norm. Denial is, again, the board found that balancing test went the other way. The local concerns are so important, and not protecting them would be so egregious to the health, welfare, public safety, environment, so forth, that the board feels they just can't do it. Hopefully, that the local concerns that can be grappled with can be done through conditions, but as the chairman said, the conditions can't be so onerous that it causes the project to be uneconomic, because that would defeat the purpose of the process. If the developer is aggrieved by the decision, either a denial or an approval with conditions because the conditions were too onerous, their appeal rights go to the Housing Appeals Committee, which is an arm of the Department of Housing and Community Development. They're not a court, but they act much like a court. There's a magistrate who sits over the proceedings. It's very court-like with testimony, witnesses, all of that. And having been through that process twice in Hudson, in which our decisions were appealed and we went to HAC because we felt we were right in the conditions that we imposed, and they felt aggrieved by those decisions. It's a very fair and open process, but one that sees that balancing test as such that the need for affordable housing makes that bar very high. So those local concerns really need to rise to that level by being, so egregious to upset the public health, public safety, the environment, so forth. And in our two cases, we didn't get what we wanted, but we were able to negotiate and get somewhere close to what we wanted. But it's not a process that I would say is always in favor of the town. So if the ZBA and the town can work with the project as much as possible and try to come out with a decision that's as good for the board as it can be, as good for the developer as it can be, as good for the neighborhood as possible, then it keeps everything local, and you don't have to run the risk of what happens through that proceeding.
Thank you. Okay, any questions, guys? No? Any questions for our
No,
consultant?
at the moment, no.
Okay. All right, so with that, let's have the applicant come up and give an initial presentation, or identify what resources they have here, and
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening.
what's that?
Presentation board, so it's visible to the camera.
Sure, I don't, if we could.
Should we pull that presentation board around? We only have one camera, which is over here.
Would you like it facing here?
And
Facing the
just
camera.
along to the camera, can you see the board? Thank you.
Members of the board, good evening. Mr. Fesnola, good evening, and for neighbors and abutters, good evening. Thank you for coming. My name is Douglas DeShane. I am the attorney representing Still River Road Development, LLC. With me this evening, Robert Pace from Still River Road Development, and Seth Donahoe from Duchamp Dillis, our engineers on the project. What we'd like to do tonight is this is the opening dog and pony, as we sometimes refer to it. So I'd like to give you a quick overview of the project, talk to you a little bit of what we've done leading up to this point, and then at that point, we're certainly happy to answer any questions and discuss the process. As Mr. Fesnola said, and as people probably suspect, this isn't a one or a two night process. This tends to go on a while we work cooperatively to try and make this work for everyone. So we will continue to provide new information and changes as the process moves along.
one quick question, and I assume the it's all in the packet, but the three qualifying items that Mr. Pizzola referred to, was
Sure.
more for the audience perspective, that the eligibility, the site control, and the limited dividend declaration, that's all within the package.
Yes, it is. In fact, prior to being even able to apply to this board, we have to satisfy those conditions. So we have in fact received a site eligibility letter from Mass Housing. Part of that application was the information on the limited dividend company, as well as proof of ownership. And we have provided all of those again in your application. So Mr. Russell, who is one of the members of Still River Road, is the owner of the property. And Still River Road Development LLC was set up as a limited dividend company and has professed that it will in fact operate under those terms and conditions. So we've satisfied the three, at least initial steps. As was mentioned in the introduction, this is a proposed home ownership project under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B. And again, our site proposal that allows us to be here is through Mass Housing. Let me talk a little bit about the site. Many of you are familiar with it, and for those that aren't, it's depicted here on this plan. Still River Road, Route 110, as I understand it is also known as, is here. The Harvard town line is here. So we are, I guess, we can say we're the last lot on the right heading out of town into Harvard along Still River Road. The site is 6.6 acres in size. We have approximately 586 feet of frontage along Still River Road. Of our 6.68 acres, we've got 3 acres that can be termed or considered as wetland resource areas, and we have 2.8 acres of upland. In addition to the wetlands resources on the site, we have both perennial and intermittent streams, so there are associated riverfront areas with the streams. And although we do have some riverfront, we are proposing all our work to be in excess of 200 feet from all of the streams, so the whole Rivers Protection Act and the regulations associated therewith do not come into play. Additionally, we do have some floodplain area on the site, which we will be disturbing a small portion of that. However, we have proposed to recreate that floodplain at a 2-to-1 ratio. So every square foot that we're proposing to change the elevation, we are going to recreate that elevation 2 times on the site. So net, it will actually be an increase in the flood storage capacity of the land, and by no means a decrease. Lastly, we do have a portion of our site is mapped by Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program as estimated habitat of rare species. We have worked and continue to work with Natural Heritage, and I'll touch on that in just a minute. In general, as I assume most of you know, the site is surrounded by residential uses. We have a number of single-family homes across the street here along Still River Road. This is an expansive wetland, so the first residential home in Harvard is set off a ways, but that part of Harvard is also a residential zone. To the north is the Harvard.
Abutters?
What's that?
Are there direct abutters in Harvard to the property, or is they just?
It's vacant.
It's vacant land. I'm sure someone owns it, but this area is significantly wet, and it goes quite a ways before you get up to that first home, so there's quite a separation. To the south, we do have single-family residence here, and as you travel, I guess approximately 1,400 feet south, there's a 7 lot residential subdivision down here as well. So in general, in exacting terms, it is a residential use area. We are proposing to build 8 total units, and they will be duplex style units, and that we're proposing to put 2 units in each of 4 buildings, for a total of 8. These are 3-story buildings. They are set on 2 separate lots, so it might be hard to see, but there is actually a division of the lot here with 2 units, a septic system and a well on one lot, and the 2 buildings with 4 units, a septic and a well on the second lot. So it's 2 separate lots, 4 units on each lot. Of the 8 units, 6 are proposed to be 2-bedroom units. 2 of the units are proposed to be 3-bedroom units. In utilizing the 40B program, the state requires that a minimum of 10% of your housing is 3 bedrooms, as the state is certainly looking to see family housing as well as 2-bedroom units. So we are required to have a minimum number of 3-bedroom units. In this project, we are proposing 2 3-bedroom units. So total is 12 and 6. If I'm doing my math correctly, we have 18 bedrooms in total. As a 40B, 25% of the units, in our case 2 units, will have to be sold at affordable prices to eligible buyers. Eligible buyers are defined as those making 80% of the median income for this area. So you'll find you'll have to make 80% or less of the median income, and then you would find yourself potentially, depending on assets and other factors, if you were in fact eligible, you could seek purchase of one of these units at the affordable price. As was stated earlier, these units will stay affordable in perpetuity through a regulatory document and restrictive covenants, and they will forever be affordable, and therefore the town will be able to count them on their affordable inventory, getting towards that 10% goal of affordable housing. One of our 2-bedroom units and one of the 3-bedroom units will be sold as affordable units. So as you can see from the drawing, or you sort of get a feel, of the total 6.6 acres, we're really only working and developing on approximately 1 acre of the property right here in the center. The remaining 5.5 plus or minus acres is proposed to stay in its natural state, including preservation and enhancement of the open meadow, which is a particular resource area that we are tasked with protecting. With respect to lot coverage, meaning the buildings and pavement, we are only looking at 6% of our site being either a building footprint or pavement, leaving 94% of the site in a pervious state, grass, meadow, wetland, just non-pavement, non-building. So we have significant 94% of the site will be left as open space. With respect to utilities, as I said earlier, each of 2 buildings will have its own well. So there'll be a well for these 2 units and a well for these 2, as well as 2 separate septic systems that will service 4 units each. I believe the septics are designed for 19 bedrooms. We're at 18 bedrooms, so we're staying below that design criteria. Access to the site, we are proposing to build a new driveway here, sort of approximately where the opening to the site is today. That will be a 15-foot driveway. It's approximately 240 feet long if you measure the center line all the way to the back side of the cul-de-sac. There's a cul-de-sac here at the end to allow for emergency vehicles to enter and exit in a safe manner. We've provided 20-foot roundings on the end of that driveway so the trucks can get in and out and make the turns necessary for a safe access. Based on the National Traffic Engineering manuals, we have calculated that these units generate just over 5 trips per day on average. So we're looking at approximately 45 trips a day that will be generated by this project in a 24-hour period, so about 45 cars a day coming in or out. We have met with a number of your boards and commissions and committees. We have met with your fire chief, both your old or previous fire chief as well as the new fire chief, to discuss issues regarding firefighting and water supplies. And I just received today a comment letter from the new chief, and he had some specific questions concerning our proposed water supply, which is actually just over the line in Harvard. There's a firefighting pond here. It is within 1,000 feet of our project, which your town regulations require, although we are continuing to work with the chief as well as the chief in Harvard to make sure that there is in fact any necessary agreements or access between the towns. From our discussions, it seems like there has always been an understanding, but now that we're proposing to build a project here, I think your new chief would like to formalize that agreement, so we are working to do that. We're also looking at the comments the chief just gave us regarding some internal circulation questions he had about fire trucks. So we're continuing to work with the chief, and certainly must satisfy his requirements in order to meet the standard Mr. Pesnoa talked about in terms of protecting public health and safety. So we
It
will.
wouldn't be like on-site cistern or something like that.
What's that?
You wouldn't have like an on-site cistern.
We are not proposing that now because there is this water access, but we need to see how those discussions progress, because at the end of the day, we have to satisfy the fire chief.
Between the
You
towns.
have a 720-foot shot from that water source into this development which means the town would have to lay out hoses over crossing Route 110 and blocking that road. You know, I think that you get some issues to deal with there. I think the town has no right to maintain any kind of a dry hydrant in Harvard, and that could be an issue because Harvard may not want us to use their water supply. So I think you get some homework to do on that issue.
We do. We do, I agree. We have met with your design review board, and very helpful, a lot of information. In fact, we committed to providing the design review board some additional information, and I suspect we will be back to see them shortly. Although we did want to get before this board and get the hearing open and start to get some feedback, so that as this project evolves, we can provide the design review board the information that is, you know, timely and up to date. So, you know, we wanted to get this process moving, we wanted to get some inputs. I mean, already we're looking at changes from the fire department, so, you know, that's gonna change, that may change the design, it might impact design, which would impact the drawings and things we need to give to the design review board. So we really have to work some of these things in parallel. And I might also just jump there. The same is true for conservation. My clients have an existing order of conditions for a single-family home on this property that was recently renewed. So conservation is aware of the site. They're aware of the resources. This is not a new site, so we've got some groundwork there. We will, as was stated earlier, we will have to file for a notice of intent with your Conservation Commission, but again, it's just a little premature. Until we start to solidify some of these things, we don't want to go in and seek a permit only to have something change down the road and we got to go back. Again, we expect that somewhere in this process, during this process with this board, we will get to a point where we can file with conservation, and we will run those hearings in parallel through the center of them to the end, so that we can keep our drawings and our proposals consistent and not end up getting one permit and having to go back. So we will be back to see your Conservation Commission sooner than later. Lastly, under the previous single-family home proposal, natural heritage issued a no-take letter saying that the proposed development would not have an impact, a significant impact on the estimated habitat, and with some conditions, they determined that that proposed work would not result in a take of the species.
How long ago was that?
2015?
2015?
Okay, so it was longer than a year ago?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We have contacted Natural Heritage. My office has spoken with the reviewer at Natural Heritage. We've provided them draft copies of the plans and conceptuals of the plans, and feedback so far is that if we can keep the development envelope where it's currently proposed, they don't see where that will have an impact on their prior determination. However, we do have to formally apply and seek that determination from Natural Heritage. And again, we are ready to do that, but we kind of want to solidify that we're within the, that we can represent a development envelope that will be consistent throughout and not change. So again, we're ready to file with Natural Heritage, but we want to feel that at least the building envelope is pretty solid before we go back for a determination. Otherwise, we just have to go back again. Literally for a foot, right? If the line changed a foot, we'd have to go back to them. So ready to go, know that we have to go there, but we haven't quite done that yet, as we wanted to open this up and get going through the process.
When we talk about a taking, so is that, what are the factors? Is like, for example, single family, if you, I mean, it seems like it's less impact versus 18 bedroom units, type of, so how does that factor in?
It's really a function of ground disturbance. It's ground
What about
disturbance.
species habitat?
What's that?
What about species habitat?
Well, that's what we're talking about. This site has been mapped
Yeah.
as a priority habitat for certain species, rare or endangered species. So it's mapped. So any work within that mapped area requires review by Natural Heritage. They can make one of two determinations. One is a no-take determination. In other words, what you're proposing is of the size that they don't think it will have a significant impact on the habitat. So it's no take. You're not taking habitat, you're not taking animals. So that's a scientific determination Natural Heritage makes. However, that, like many things, that comes with conditions as well. Many times, in order to satisfy the no-take letter, you have to preserve, protect, enhance. They're conditional no-takes as well. It's a rarity that you get a clean no-take and you don't have to do anything. So they generally tend to be conditional. The other thing they can do, which they haven't done on this site as of yet, is determine that in fact there will be a taking. There will be an impact, measurable impact on the habitat or on the animals themselves. In which case you're required to seek a conservation management permit from Natural Heritage. And it's a more exacting and longer permitting process. So Natural Heritage decides whether there's a take or no take. If there is a take, you then need to get a conservation management permit. And those two come with significant conditions and requirements. I've built turtle habitat and turtle nesting grounds or protected areas. There's a lot of things that Natural Heritage can make you do.
So do things like light, traffic, noise, other than disturbance, you said, so do those all factor into that?
I certainly suspect all of that plays into fact. One of the biggest things, though, that they're looking at is whether or not you are impacting habitat, not walkways, but the way that the critters are migrating. Are you now putting a roadway between an upland area and a wetland area where the critters are always coming across? That's problems. We build turtle bridges and all sorts of turtle deflectors and other protective measures if the Natural Heritage decides we're imposing on travelways of the critters. Clearly, any ground disturbance can be, or result in a taking of a place where these animals might breed or live or whatever. So I know they consider it, but most of the comments that I've dealt with have to do with ground disturbance and impacts to migratory pathways.
Something related, but not necessarily, this developer has a project on Hudson Road. And 2 weeks ago, they went and cleared out a bunch of shade trees that were in the public right of way. And so I want to get a pledge right on there that there will be no reoccurrence of that type of activity without the approval from the town.
I have not worked and I'm not familiar with the other project, but I can assure you, anything we do here has to be in complete compliance with any and all permits. So if you have a shade tree
That had to be-
bylaw,
No, it's a state bylaw.
state bylaw. We certainly cannot waive or exempt any state requirements like conservation, Wetlands Protection Act, Title V, and there's a state scenic highway regulation we cannot waive out of that. So I will assure you, I will promise, best of my ability, everything will be done here in conformance with necessary permits. And I will find out what's going on over on Hudson Road Fire.
Good.
We estimate that following a final approval, and Mr. Pesnoa talked about final approval, should this project be approved, we then need to file everything back again with Mass Housing, who gave us the site eligibility letter. They will review the comprehensive permit to make sure that it is in conformance with the original site approval. So we showed them 8 for-sale townhouse units. If we come back with 24 rental units, the state's gonna have a problem with that. So what they do is they review the final comprehensive permit for conformity with the site eligibility. They will recheck all the finances associated with the project to make sure that we're gonna live within our limited dividend requirements, and then they will issue final approval. It's not until you receive final approval from the state following receipt of a comprehensive permit that you can begin to do anything in terms of construction. We estimate that construction would begin on this project approximately 90 days following receipt of that approval, and would take approximately 18 months to finish and to sell the units and essentially finish the project in its entirety, after which we would then again have to go back to the state for their final review and audit on the project. A couple of administrative matters. We have not satisfied 2 of your requirements under your local bylaw with respect to our application, and those are relating to landscape plans and condo documents. And so I'm asking the board, not for a waiver from those 2 requirements, because we fully intend to provide those to you. However, we would seek a little relief from having to file them now, and I will tell you why. It's very difficult for me to draft condominium documents and provide you a detailed condominium budget and all that goes with condo docs when I'm not really sure what this project will look like some number of weeks or months from now as we get down the process. And same is true for the landscape plans. You know, I could throw some bushes on here and a couple of trees, but I'd really rather you see a true representation of what the landscaping will look like once we've at least gotten to a point where we know what we have for buildings and units. So I'm not seeking a waiver from providing those. I just want to let the board know we'd like to get a couple of meetings under our belt, get through with the fire department. You know, some of these details that can have tremendous impact on your final design before I draft condo docs and we provide you a detailed landscaping plan. So I'm
So
asking,
these would be available before any final acceptance?
Oh, well before. In fact,
We'll have to
I mean, they're
review it.
working, I know they're probably working on the landscaping plan now. They don't wanna finalize the details till we have
No,
a
I
good
understand.
feel. And the conduct docs, I just gotta tell you, I mean, I could draft some generic conduct docs, but I don't know what they tell you, you know? I prefer you see conduct docs specific to this project, where I can give you an actual budget for the condominium fees and all of that. And I won't know that till I know what we're building, what it's gonna cost to maintain it, what we're maintaining. So, again, just seeking a little bit of time in submitting those, but certainly will provide them well in advance of any decisions.
And to the extent that it's just extra cost because you're putting a boilerplate something out there and then have to redo it, it doesn't seem like it makes sense to have to do that twice, so.
Well, that's why we're asking for a little bit of time.
Just as long as the-
But I will commit to you, I will stand in front of the detailed landscape plan long before you are making any decisions.
I would just ask that you put a letter to Erica saying that Eric is the town planner, but also facilitates our board, just documenting that, you know, as
I
of
think
tonight.
we did that earlier today.
Yes, so Melissa Robbins actually sent an
Yes.
email today stating that. So
All right.
I think that's-
Melissa Robbins is a partner of mine,
Great.
and you will see at various times my name or Melissa's name on documents, and you may even see Melissa here at a meeting. Much like yourselves, we have a work schedule that you just never know. So I have a partner that we work together on these projects. Really, that is the presentation I had proposed. I was going to invite you all to a site visit, but I understand the board's going to schedule that, so that's great. We'll make ourselves available whenever it's convenient for the board. We would like you to come out and see the site. I think it's very important. With that, we're here to answer any questions, provide any additional information you might need, and as I said, we are continuing outside of these meetings to work with the fire chief, and we'll soon be working with conservation. We will too at some point, and this is generally a little farther down the road than anything else, we do have to go to your Board of Health at some point for permits for the septic systems, but both the Board of Health permits and the conservation permits, as you know, can be impacted by the waivers you grant or don't grant. So we can't seek those permits until we have an answer on waivers, so that we know what we're seeking. With that, we're happy to answer any questions the board might have, or any of our neighbors might have.
So, any questions from the board to start off? Thank you for the presentation, it was thorough, appreciate that.
As we get into it,
Yeah.
we'll have some
Okay.
questions.
All right, so, we'll reserve our questions, you know, sort of digest some of this, but I think there was a question in the back, so, okay? Please stand up and identify yourself and where you live and.
Sure. Anastasia Downey, 366 Still River Road. And my question or comment, I guess, is I would encourage the board to get a landscaping plan sooner than later. As far as I can tell from the plans that have been presented and proposed, there's going to be significant build happening on this property. I don't understand why there would be a concern or delay. The Title V is Title V, it's state regulation, so they know what they have to fill and what they need to do to meet that regulation, regardless of Board of Health, you know, our local regs, the state regs need to be met. So they've got their septic proposals, they know what they need to fill there, and I think it would help the residents and the board understand better the type of change that's going to occur on this property if this septic moves forward and the fill moves forward. The retaining walls and the you know, bushes are one thing, but movement of land is a whole other story, and they're pretty detailed in their proposal and seem to know what they were doing with their Title V requirements. Thank you.
If I could just answer that, Mr. Chairman, through the chair. When we seek permits for the septic system, you seek them through your local Board of Health. Your local Board of Health actually applies both state law and local law. Much like your Conservation Commission, they issue a permit, it's under both your local wetland regulations and under the state regulations. So the state lets your local boards issue those permits. Our septic designs meet all state requirements. So you're right, if we were just applying to the state, we could do that because we meet all the regulations and there's no questions. However, we have sought some waivers from your local regulations. So before I can apply to your local Board of Health for both the state and the local permit, I need to know whether we have those waivers or not. So that's the only reason we're waiting.
Could you explain what those are?
Sure can.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have to refer to a document though.
No problem.
Could I have, come on over here. And all of our waivers are contained in our application to this board. So I know they are available, this list is available publicly.
What page? Sorry, thank you.
No, I'll get to it. It would be Exhibit L of the application. And it is a detailed listing of the waivers / exemptions we're seeking from local regulations, whether that is zoning or non-zoning. Specifically with respect to the Board of Health, and you'll forgive me for my technical prowess or lack thereof. We are seeking a waiver under your local regulations to allow for our leaching facilities to be located 10 feet from a property line, which is allowed under the state rules but not your local rules. To allow the leaching facility to be within 35 feet of the driveway. To allow leaching area to be located within 100 feet of a bordering vegetated wetland. And to allow leaching area to be, there are 2 instances where our leaching fields, one on lot 2B and one on lot 2C, are within 100 feet of wetlands. And lastly, to allow leaching facility servicing a separate building to located within 30 feet of each other. All of those waivers are allowed. They're not waivers under local state regulations. They're allowed distances. Your local regs are a little tougher, so we've asked for waivers for those. So those waivers are listed in Exhibit L of the application.
So how, you said within 100 feet, how close was that? Oh, sorry.
State regulations allow 50. We are at 77 and 51.
Thank you.
So, in general, we're gonna go through the application process, so it's not bad that you asked a question, but some of these, as we get into the actual application and start reviewing it, we'll be certainly putting much more attention and focus on it, so, I don't wanna get
Too bogged down.
well bogged down, and as I said, this is an overview night, and so I think the applicant and the attorney have a good sense of where, this is going to go as far as we're gonna have active participants, and people are gonna, really wanna know how it's gonna impact their community, so we're not gonna not ask, we're not gonna prevent people from asking questions, but know that this may not be the right time, but we're certainly gonna get it's a pretty big application, we have to digest it too.
Emphasis on the landscape plan is a good thing to get your hands on.
No, and you certainly communicated that it's not a waiver from supplying it, it's just until he sort of gets a sense of what pieces are moving.
Thank
you. Is that correct statement?
Yes, exactly.
In the middle here?
Don McFarland, Boxborough Road in Stowe, also a friend of the Oxbow National Wildlife Refuge Group. How does one submit data to you people? Can we do it at the meeting? Can I mail you something? How does this work?
I would recommend you mail it to the town, or drop it off to the town to Erica, our administrator here, and then she will get it to the board and to any other boards that potentially require it, and to the applicant, so that we're all on a playing field.
Okay, now if I want to submit something to the conservation, that would be directed to them, probably.
Correct, yeah, and you can actually email me as well if that's easier, and my email, either way, mail, drop off, however you'd like to do it, but my email, for anybody else that wants to
That
do
can
the
be a
same.
progressive process for all of us from
Sure.
time to time until you are ready to close the hearing,
Of course,
Mhm.
yeah, totally.
maybe a year from
understand.
now.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
So my email, I just wanted to let everyone know, it's townplanner@townofbolton.com, and it can be found on the town's website, so.
Okay. Question in the back over there, gentlemen? Yep.
I'm Joe Petrello from 305 Von Hill Road
Mhm.
in Bolton. He kept saying it's divided into 2 lots, but as of now, it's now one large lot, 6.8 acres. He says it's divided into 2 parcels at this point, but has it been divided yet? Has that been approved as 2 lot subdivision at this point, or is it still one main lot? He says it's divided into 2. And then my other question, or statement, I guess, I talked to Natural Heritage this morning, actually, and they said they had no history or no record of the change permitted. They had the 5-bedroom septic system with the 1 house lot on there, but as of now, they had nothing in writing or nothing, no knowledge of the grand scheme of this big project that got swapped out, that got changed from the 1-bedroom septic system, 5-bedroom septic system, 1 house to the 4 units that are being proposed now. And I was curious also, Mass Housing, have they walked the site, have they seen the site, or is it just on paper? So, you see, one thing on paper, one thing actually visibly there. So Mass Housing approved 6.8 acre lot for all these cluster houses, which is actually a nice way of saying that they're squeezing everything into a small area. And if things fail with those 11 storm drain systems, and the septic system was approved for 5-bedroom, now we did a 19-bedroom septic system, was it perk tested again since 2015? Or has the perk test not been done since then? And now it changed from 5 bedrooms to 19 bedrooms.
Okay, so there's a lot of questions there. So
Yes, I get lots of questions.
No,
I just built a house there last year on the same parcel, that abuts that parcel. And I know when I had to go through the conservation to build my 1 house, with the turtles migrating through, I actually found Glenn's turtle, and it was documented through Stacia here. So I've seen the danger turtles on the property, and I'm the closest one to that property. And like I said, I built the house there last year, moved in last August, so I dealt with conservation for 6 months to build my 1 house. So,
first primary question was, is it has it been subdivided to 2 lots, or is it 1?
It is currently 1 lot. We have proposed the splitting of the lot as part of our application to this board.
Okay. Second question, if I recall, was, one of the second questions, has Mass Housing walked the site physically?
Yes.
I don't know that.
Yes,
but
they have.
They have, okay.
It's standard procedure for Mass Housing to walk the site.
Okay, and do they document, it's documented, so if the gentleman had a question, he can call Mass Housing?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And the third question, you had 3.
was it perk tested again since 2015?
Third
So
was
something like
national
that?
heritage. Third was a national heritage.
Well,
they been notified?
I don't know who you spoke with, sir, but I received today a letter, I believe, from your Conservation Commission agent, perhaps, saying that they talked with Mass Housing, and pretty much verified what I said, and that is that we did informally send a concept plan over to the reviewer who did the review for the original no-take letter for the single-family home. They indicated that it didn't appear that we were increasing the disturbance a significant amount, and therefore would not have potentially not have an impact. However, that was not an official determination. We have to file an application with the new plan before we can get a true written determination from Natural Heritage.
Okay. I mean, as of now, I talked to them today, and they said that there was nothing formally written down. I talked to Jesse Ledeck, I dealt with my property.
Yeah.
He was not there at the office today. I talked to somebody else, and they said, someone talked to Melanie on November, on this.
Well, the point
September
taken, was they have to follow
Right,
through
be
and
fine.
take care of this, so.
And then the perk question, was it re-perked again since 2015? The large septic system, is the soil quality gonna allow for the drainage of a large septic system like that?
So,
From 5 bedrooms to 19 bedrooms, that's like a huge increase.
so question about parking.
If I can field that, my
Sure.
name's Seth Donahoe, I'm with Ducharme and Dilla Civil Design Group, and we did lay out the septic systems based on the 2015 soil testing. That testing remains valid, and the systems are sized as required by Title V and the local Board of Health regulations.
So, so there haven't been additional parking?
Correct.
Because you believe the initial testing qualifies?
Correct.
Okay. Question further back?
Yeah, hi, I'm Eric Johnson. We're at 436 Still River Road. We're directly across from the property. And one of the issues I wanted to point out is in relation to the condo documents. Remember that this is a very ecologically, environmentally, historically, everything else sensitive piece of property with some very sophisticated septic systems, wells. We're now talking about fire things. All of this is going to be owned by condominium association. The condo documents, the budgets, all of this in terms of any enforceability, of any of the agreements, any of the restrictions, any of the conditions are going to be with the condominium association. The budgets, all of that, the condo fee, I think is very essential to understanding the extent to which anything you guys work out is actually enforceable. 18 months from now, all those units are sold, the developer's gone.
Understood, and just from the history on the 40Bs we've done, the final approval of the comprehensive permit was not done until we had condominium documents reviewed, tied out through the actual proposed permit, and we had assistance. So Joe may have some experience with that as well, so it's not something that will just sort of just get dumped into the process and not reviewed.
Very critical.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we go further back and we'll work our way to the front.
Hi, Annalisa on Still River Road. I actually just a little general question out of curiosity. One is, I understand that the plan is to divide the land into 2 lots to work out this project. I'm just curious to know why that is.
So that we can meet required regulations and technical requirements, we need to have it on 2 separate lots. In order to design, meet engineering criteria, setbacks, well setbacks, septic setbacks, we had to do it this way.
So, no, I'm obviously not familiar with all of this. So if there are actually 4 structures, then why would it not be 4 lots? Or if it's one complex, why would it not be all on 1 lot? I'm just trying to understand that.
If I could answer quickly, part of this is to streamline the number of waivers we're requesting for, and by doing it this way, we could, under the comprehensive permit, propose multiple lots for each dwelling, but that would be a much lengthier waiver list. So this is a way to ask for fewer waivers and seek the maximum feasible compliance with the local regulations at the same time.
And you have a follow-up question?
I did have 2 questions.
Okay.
The other's another general question about the condo association. I don't know how those work, but if someone is in an affordable unit, is their responsibility financially adjusted for relative to what they paid for that and ongoing?
Yes.
It is.
Okay, so then we had one in the front here. Oh, wait a second.
Me?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. I'm Marcy Silver, Still River Road, 438. We're right across the street too. I just had a question as far as the acreage. You had mentioned that it's 6 acres?
6.68, yes.
Right, and you're just planning to build all this on 1 acre?
Approximately, yeah. The
Right.
development envelope is approximately 1 acre.
And then the other 5 acres are gonna maintain
Sure.
as natural?
If I
So
could.
that people can't go on in those 5 acres? So I guess what I'm proposing is that, what you're saying is there's 18 bedrooms, could potentially be 2 people in a bedroom. So you're saying about 30 people are gonna be on 1 acre and not be able to go past, you know, the reality of little kids and, you know, how are you gonna prevent, once you're not there, the kids and stuff from not going onto those other habitats that are supposedly safe? And, I mean, the reality of 30 people being on 1 acre and not being able to move to me is just kind of, we live on 11 acres and we kids and we move all over the place. I just am having a hard time with the reality that 30 people with children are just gonna be enclosed in this one little area and not be able to go anywhere. And because the Vaughn Hill trails are back there, his property's back there, and the instinct of these children and stuff is gonna be to get cut through, go back there. The trails are all back there. I mean, I live there, so I know, you know, and instead of going down all the way down Vaughn Hill into Bowen, they're just gonna cut back. And I just think the reality of all those people on a 1 acre is pretty, you know, I don't think it's gonna happen if they can't move around.
Well, first of all, it's been our experience, and you can check with the state housing groups, that you generally, it is a rarity that you'll find 4 people living in a 2-bedroom unit. In fact, 2-bedroom units generally provide for very few school-age children. Not so true on the 3 bedrooms, I will give you that. We do expect families in the 3 bedrooms. In fact, that's why the state requires that we build 3 bedrooms, because they're encouraging family homes. With respect to keeping people out of these other areas, and if you look at the plan, when I talk about 1 acre, I'm measuring from the inside of this retaining wall out along the, you know, disturbance line, and then wrapping back in here and coming in here. And this is the area we will be disturbing. The remaining area, pursuant to probably our order of conditions from your Conservation Commission as well as natural heritage permits, will prohibit any intrusion into those other areas. And in fact, we already know we're going to have to enhance some of the turtle habitat in this area, and we are going to be required to maintain that as a meadow because it provides certain habitat for certain critters. So the meadow itself is a benefit. Typically, natural heritage will require that we put some kind of a conservation restriction on the non-developable areas, which severely restricts what you can and cannot do in that area. However, they do, if it's feasible, they do allow passive trails and walkways. I'm not aware at this point of, you know, what we have for trails out in this area. I'm not aware of whether or not we could provide access to those trails from our site. I'm sure if we can without disturbing wetlands, either your zoning board or natural heritage might even require those. Other than that, we have provided, you know, some limited outdoor area if we do have some children, and that's how we've addressed that. We don't expect 30 people here, and we don't expect a large number of children. And that's based on state studies.
So it's something we'll be looking at. I mean, all those aspects will get reviewed as part of the site plan, the 40B, the waivers and things like that. So good point to start with, but we'll get more into detail. So just for timing, we've got, I think, 3 more hands up. So after those 3, 4 more hands up. 5 more, okay. So, but we have a cutoff, and then we're going to have additional hearings. So if you don't get heard, or if we can really wrap it up, we can move on to our other order. But that's not saying that. I mean, you can even submit a question, and we'll be sure to take it for the next hearing, or just come back if you can't come. You know, but.
And if people email Erica,
right.
People email Erica with details, then we'll have it in writing, and then it all becomes part of the public record.
So, because just so you know, we've had, let's say, I think 6 or 7 40B, and they can turn into marathons, and it doesn't really do us anyone any good. So let's go with the hands that are up. So we'll start with this woman here, then we'll work our way to the front, and then this gentleman over here, and then we'll schedule a site walk, and then we'll move on to the next hearing. Okay.
I'm Jane Moosebroker. I'm with the Friends of the Oxbow and formerly Coventry Wood Road and the Bolton Conservation Commission. And I want to know how you're going to deal with mosquitoes. I walked this land and the mosquitoes were trying to carry me away. And I'm aware of the hog swamp development, which never should have been built. And those people wanted the entire town sprayed for mosquitoes because they didn't know that everybody wasn't inundated as they were. And you know that spraying is bad for the environment and bad for people's health.
Okay. Is there any type of mosquito control?
We have not at this point broached that question. I didn't realize there was an extraordinary.
Yes.
I guess all I can say is that a significant number of people live around us. One gentleman just built his house there. I suspect we'll deal with mosquitoes the same way everyone deals with mosquitoes.
You'll be gone by the time you are trying to deal with mosquitoes.
So then we have this gentleman here, patiently.
Hi, Bob Martell, 302 Long Hill Road.
Okay.
I had a few questions. First, the DEP, has there been any change in DEP filing since it's gone from a single family to this proposal? And is
No. Okay, no.
And I assume that needs to take place to move forward?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. I had a question about site control. Included in the packet was deeds for the property. It looks like the property is deeded to a Turn Left LLC. I haven't heard any mention of that LLC in the meeting today. Are they the owners of the property, and who would that
Correct.
be?
So is that is that?
That's Mr. Russell.
Mr. Russell, so.
Okay. The address given on the deed is a 130 Parker Street, Unit 12 in Lawrence, Mass. That's the site or residence of a mechanical construction services company. It's a business. It doesn't seem to be David Russell, so I had a question about, again, site ownership there. How does that link to the owner of the structure?
I'd have to check on that, but
It's a shared office over there that we have.
In your.
That's
Are
my
you
address.
with
Mr. Pace,
Mechanical
he's a
Construction
member of
Services?
the.
No, it's all one suite with offices in it.
Sir, could you
Okay.
just identify yourself? Just
Robert Pace.
Rob Pace, and your,
I'm one of the developers.
He's a
My
member of
understanding-
Still River Road.
still, okay, part of the Still River Road development.
Yeah, my understanding is that's an office park with multiple units and multiple businesses in it, and the business that's residing there is Mechanical Construction Services. But actually,
They're right next door to my office.
okay, but that's next door to your office, that's not your office. On their website, there's no listing of yourself or David Russell, so again, I'm just questioning who owns this property that we're asking to be developed to. That's what's on the deed.
We've supplied you a copy of our deed, and we've just testified that my clients have an office in that building.
I've encouraged the board to look into
Okay,
this.
so to our best.
We'll
we
provide you
will,
proof.
But see, is it Davis? What's David Russell? See, David Russell is the owner of the property that.
It's owned through the LLC.
Okay.
He is a member and manager of that LLC.
It's not a single member, it's a multiple member.
Is,
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Just go back to that one question. I've been building in town here with Mr. Russell for years, okay, and all the communication, okay, that both Erica and Rebecca have ever done have always been that address, because that's where we are.
I've just noticed multiple different addresses and LLC names associated with Mr. Russell, so I just want to be sure that this
We'll
is
confirm it.
directly linked. Another question I had was, given the sensitivity of the area, and the general public doesn't know about archaeological concerns, because they're, well kept secrets, are there any potential archaeological concerns with this site or area? And you probably can't talk about that here, but it's something I'd like to be investigated.
Still.
Historical Commission business, Mr. Chairman.
Is it related to this gentleman's question?
Yes, we're the ones who
Okay.
published the archaeological
Okay,
reconnaissance survey.
So, you want to give your.
Martha Remington, 447 Main Street,
Mhm.
Chairman of the Bolton Historical Commission. I did write a letter to the town regarding this and pointed out that it has both historical and archaeological significance, being near the Still and Nashua rivers, and for many, many thousands of years Indian-related migration during certain seasons, you know, they spend a certain amount of time here. We have two portions to our archaeological reconnaissance survey, a public portion and a confidential portion. So we are kind of on top of this as far as, we can't point out where things are, but it is archaeologically sensitive and has been since 2001 and long prior when we had that report written.
So if there's any type of requirement or request from your board's position, you'll make that a.
Well, we
to the
really,
best, or if there's something you want to prevent from happening.
yeah, really, I mean, there isn't a lot that we can do except
Okay.
state that it is archaeologically sensitive. And, you know, we wouldn't request that they go digging around for things, but the chances are that it's quite hot with archaeological things. As that whole strip from Still River, you know, from Lancaster up through, including Harvard, is.
And just a final question or comment in regards to the DEP checklist for the stormwater report. So I have some general concerns about what the destruction to the area might do to the section at the bottom of Von Hill Road in Still River, because there's generally water problems there to begin with, especially in very rainy seasons, snow melting, etc. So I know we can talk about this at another time in detail, but I just wanted to mention that the checklist requires that the party responsible for operation and maintenance be defined. And in the plan right now, it all just says to be determined. So kind of gets back to somebody else's question earlier about the condo association. Who's going to own maintaining some of the things in here that are on maintenance schedules that look like they range from quarterly to yearly to some things here suggest that they need to be checked every 45 years, right? So somebody's going to need to have long-term ownership of this to make sure that we don't have issues in the surrounding area.
If I may answer, as we don't know who should be responsible for constructing the stormwater management system at this time, that's why it says to be determined. The board and the town would be provided with a list of those people as they update through the process.
So it's only a skeleton, but there's a lot of meat and bones put on it as we work to.
Yeah, and the communication with the town and the permitting offices will be there the whole way.
This gentleman here.
Bob Sikansky, I'm just representing myself at tonight's meeting. But the finished structures and the finished infrastructure there is all compact on 1 acre.
Well, just want to interrupt. So you said you're representing yourself, but are you a rep?
I'm on the Board of Selectmen, but I'm only speaking for myself here
But for the
tonight.
people that don't know which state
Okay.
you're at, state your location.
I'm sorry, Bob Sikansky, 177 Norse Road.
Thank you.
I'm on the Board of Selectmen, but I am not speaking on behalf of the board. I'm only speaking on behalf of myself tonight.
Thank you.
So the finished project is within an acre, but it's not clear to me how much of the entire 6+ acres is going to be disturbed in the course of the construction. You're going to have to move dirt, you're going to have to put it someplace, so on and so forth. So can you give us some sense of that scale?
When I spoke about the 1 acre, I was defining the outer edge of the development envelope. All of the work will be within that 1+ acre development site. So for instance, it's proposed to have a retaining wall along here. There'll be no work beyond the retaining wall. In fact, the entire edge of development is defined. It's all going to happen in there. So no, we're not going to be disturbing here or there or anywhere else, putting dirt or moving everything. We have to accomplish everything within that construction envelope itself. Is this an enhancement, right? Because that's I do want to, one caveat to that is we will be doing some turtle habitat.
The meadow in its existing state goes very close to the edge of the wetland, and there's a proposal that's run by NHASP at this point to enhance that buffer, so we're going to provide an increased wooded buffer along the edge of the meadow at this point.
So the only work outside of that development envelope would be natural heritage required buffer enhancement, which is planting additional plants.
And what that suggests to me is that when you mentioned that you were getting a variance on the septic system for being close to a lot line, that must be the lot line that you're going to create through the center of the 6 acres.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so Martha and then this gentleman, and then we really have to table it till the next hearing, okay? So
Martha Remington, 447 Main Street. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out, there's a reason that the Town of Bolton Board of Health has more stringent requirements than the state. And I think it's not right that waivers should be given to state regs when they went through the process of setting up town regs. Thank you.
Brian Barabee, 25 Manor Road. You had said earlier too that you needed to increase the turtle habitat, and it seems like you have just answered that, but I was curious who gave you that direction, and if they already looked at these plans, approved these plans, given comment on these plans?
There was an original letter issued from NHESP. I unfortunately was not a part of that, so I may not be able to answer fully. But this is both the limit of work, closely mirrors that, enhancement of the meadow area and the enhancement of the edge of the wood line came about that, and as a result of a prior order of conditions that was issued to the site.
But that wasn't Natural Heritage, didn't ask you to do that in regards to this specific project, that's from an old project?
You are correct, and I will clarify if that was via the old order
Okay,
of
no,
conditions.
I wasn't sure if they had already made comment on this, but that has nothing to do with.
It's a
this.
carryover from the original no-take determination.
Yep.
And we assumed that Natural Heritage wouldn't reduce the requirements on us, so we just carried forth everything they previously asked for.
Right.
One quick question. Stormwater management, having been on the planning board, I've gone through some of these stormwater management projects in the past. And are you designing for a 100-year storm?
It is, there's supporting calculations in the bundle that was submitted to you.
And you can contain that on the site without any of it, where is it gonna go?
It's being infiltrated in chambers underneath the turnaround area.
Major storm, we had 2 of them in March. We had one the other day. So, I mean, that's 300 years to set.
Anyway, we're gonna have to look at that.
Right. So that'd be-
In fact, that's an excellent segue. Mr. Chairman, I'm just asking, I assume that one of the things the board will do tonight is make a determination on a peer review company so that we can get our stormwater over to them for review?
So we have 2 proposals, one with Ditch Engineering and one with Wesley Witten. And we asked Erica to go back to them regarding number of meetings and so we can get them lined up for cost, you know.
Okay.
So it's going to be one or the other. We'll just have to get some feedback from Erica and then we can make that determination.
So Gerard, actually, we did receive the revised proposal from Harvey Wynn, and that is in your packet. That is
Yes. So,
finalized.
yeah, right. So I would say we would be making a determination very fast on that, and we can get that to you. I don't think we'll do that currently at this session.
Well, if possible, we'd ask that you do, because obviously then, otherwise
could
we
email
lose
you.
another month.
Right, no, we can.
Or you can just email me
Right, we can
and let me
email
know,
you.
and I'll
No,
send it
that's
right out.
That's what we'll do.
All right, thank you.
Because we may do that as part of, the next piece of business after that, but I don't want to hold up.
I understand, that's great.
Take too many questions on that after we.
All right, thank you.
So, I think that was all the preliminary questions. As I said, there's gonna be multiple hearings, and there'll be plenty of opportunity for additional questions, so please ask them. As we say, you can email Erica. If there's a question you don't think you're gonna be here, that you want addressed, we'll address them. And as we start getting the peer review team, the departments that are, it's really their expertise, Board of Health, Conservation, Planning, we'll get those questions out to them, because we may not be able to answer the questions at the board particularly, but we're gonna get the answers, so. Schedule a site walk? Anyone, you have some travel commitments, is there any?
It's sporadic.
It's sporadic, so. Any proposed time, can you do within a week, or?
What did you have in mind?
What's the flexibility for sidewalks?
We'll adhere to your schedule.
So it could be later in the day?
I'm volunteering Seth, so whenever you want.
Meet you whenever you'd like.
Can it be on a Saturday, question?
We can do that if you need to. A weekday would be preferable, but Saturday's fine.
Well, sometimes weekdays for us, because we're all volunteers, we're working.
It's getting dark now too.
What's that?
It's getting dark now already.
Well, right, so maybe a Saturday morning type of thing?
Sure.
Okay, so.
Okay, Saturday weather looks good on Saturday.
So, how about this Saturday at 9 AM? Is that, could that work?
I'm out of town, but I don't necessarily need to be
Right.
there, so,
Okay.
but just be aware that I
Right.
can't be there.
Okay.
So my office can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, no one's bumping up there for now.
So 9:30?
Yeah.
Okay, so Saturday at 9:30?
I'm actually not available this Saturday, but I'll check with my office. Can I get to Erica back about
Sure.
confirming that tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it's not available for that Saturday, we would just take the next Saturday? Is that possible?
What's that?
Holiday weekend, but I can go. Well, again, it's for the boards, it's a non-open. So let's see if we can make it for this Saturday at 9:30.
Okay, I will confirm Erica.
Should be, and then if worst case, we'll pick another official to follow with that.
He's saying the 6th instead of the 29th.
You want to pick a continuation time?
Exactly,
All right,
so I think Monday's probably the best for Brian, is that right,
The first Monday in October, the third Monday, the second Monday, the fishing have, won't be able to make that Monday.
I guess the meeting's over.
Does anything have to be done with this machine?
We're still,
The restroom.
And I don't
One inside,
go
one
to the
outside.
library weekend, but I'll try and
Could I ask that you move any conversation outside so that we're not disturbing the videotape, and also we can talk about a date?
And please note, we haven't set the date for continuation yet.
Yeah.
If anyone's interested in knowing that, we'll be setting that.
Will it be
Right now?
published or do we?
We are, yeah, we'll be setting that in the next few minutes.
Yeah, I'm not, the two of us on the 15th, so Aaron just can't be here.
I know I can do the first. I'll just, yeah, it's fine. I'll just do it.
First next week.
Where's the first of mine?
Next Monday.
Okay.
That work for you?
Next 1 week from
Yeah.
today?
Mhm.
He's got a rough Wednesday.
That's just as far as what would be on the agenda, other than continuation of public comment.
Wednesday the third?
I mean, they didn't really touch upon stormwater, they could go through a review of that.
But it's best to engage the peer reviewer, have the peer reviewer do that, and if stormwater is gonna be the subject matter, then having that review and having your peer reviewer here to be just to give a presentation on stormwater is all well and good, but to have substance in the back and forth on it would be better. I mean, normally, if you put 4 weeks between meetings, then things can happen so that the process evolves.
Okay, sure. I have no problem moving it further into
Yeah,
October.
that's
Right,
fine.
yeah.
We did receive initial comments from the departments, which the board didn't review with the public tonight. That is another topic, obviously. But again, I think you're probably, I think that's a good idea, maybe look a month out.
Well, that's right, I originally said, well, I can't do the middle one, but further out, I can definitely do it in the first one, but,
Right.
yeah, so.
What about the 29th?
Well,
I can't do the 29th of the 30th. But I could do, that's, maybe Thursday first.
November?
Yeah. It's that same week, just the Thursday. That would be then.
Wednesday the 17th.
What's that?
Wednesday the 17th.
Hey, look, planning board.
Okay.
No, I do not have the planning board. That would work.
Wednesday the 17th?
That
Of
works.
October?
I can do 17th, that's
October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian? Yeah. So, ready?
Yep.
Okay, so let's do Wednesday 17th, 7 PM.
Yeah, let me just check. I
Where-
don't know if
where?
one's available on Wednesdays. I know on Mondays it's typically safe, but Wednesdays I'm not sure.
Looking at the peer review decision. Well, Eric said there's some information tonight on.
So we'll be talking about it later.
We can make a quick review of that after, and then.
After we set the continuation.
Has the 53G been funded?
It has. Yeah, we're so far out, more than likely that the public calendar hasn't been
Right.
updated, so it's probably not gonna show me anything anyway. Let me just double check.
I mean, if we set it and we would just have to, if you
We'll-
found out,
we'll
we just
work
have to,
around
right.
it, yeah.
We would just have to.
Yeah,
make
nothing,
notes,
nothing, it
so-
shows nothing at this
Okay.
point, so
So-
let's just go with that date.
So 7 PM in the house,
Yeah.
okay. On October 17th.
Is there a
So-
motion for that?
You want a motion?
Yes, yeah.
Or do you wanna actually,
Go
before
ahead.
we make the motion, should we talk about the peer review first? Actually, we should do that, and then,
Okay.
Are we gonna close that hearing piece of it?
We'll be just continuing, we're not gonna close it.
no, yeah,
Okay.
Right. Right.
yeah, yes.
So where's the peer review piece?
Peer review piece,
This is,
so maybe just for the purposes of the applicants, we can let them know that it's,
right, so we're going to continue the hearing until October 17th at 7 PM. It's a Wednesday in this room here. Should the room change, there'll be notice.
there will be notice, yeah.
Mhm.
And just to make sure I heard you correctly, do we know for sure, is it going to be stormwater as the topic? And initial comments from the boards?
Correct.
Okay, Thank you.
And we'll have our peer reviewer set up by then, so
In attendance?
they'll be in attendance and they can make the presentation.
Thank you.
That's tentative, we'll have to see what parties, but that's where we're going at the moment.
So firstly, Witten did get back with a revised proposal, and it's essentially $500 more to do the working session with the applicant. So it's 5,000 versus 6,500, and it's basically the same scope of services, except niche engineering only provides one public meeting and not two.
Can you speak up and repeat that?
I was just saying that, so we received 2 proposals, one from niche, one from Horsley Witten, and essentially they're the same scope of works, except for niche engineering is providing one attendance for one public meeting and not 2. Horsley Witten is, their estimate is at 4,500, and, no, excuse me, 5,000, and niche engineering is at 6,500.
So, both being qualified, we've, we've had experience with both. We've had some continuity with niche, but if all is else even in the meetings and things, we sort of level them.
Actually, we get one additional meeting
With Horsley Witten, so.
And I think also because of the nature of their business, they're much more, like, they're ecologically oriented. And because of the nature of the site, I feel like it's gonna get more scrutiny, and that they're gonna look at it through that lens versus just a pure engineering point of view.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I've worked with Horsley Witten and Mass Audubon. They do a lot of work with them, and they're well respected.
Yeah, both parties are wrong, we certainly agree there, yes. So, I mean, well, yeah, and just so some, to the extent that this is a 40B, as we're saying, we want to try to keep it as economical to potentially, as still have to live with it. So we don't want to have to spend extra just because, if they were doing something that was more valuable for service. So I tend to say I will recommend going with Horsley Witten, but it's certainly a board decision.
Well, the cost is absorbed by the applicant, right?
It is.
It is, so currently, as part of their filing, they're required to submit $5,000 for the peer review, so we have that in place now.
Okay.
So if we were to go with niche engineering, I would have to request an additional 1,500 from them to do that, just to get out of the gate with their initial review.
Okay. I think Horsley Witten.
And understand that if there's need for additional review, then there'll be additional funds that will come from the applicant.
That's right, but we might as well start, if we've already looked at it on an even basis, we went back to what we said, to sort of balance it with what we're seeing and, come back with a revised.
Makes sense. Who's the contact point at Horsley Witten? Is it Janet?
It is. Have you worked with Janet in the past?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'll make a proposal that we accept Horsley Witten.
Okay, so a motion to accept. Second, Andy, okay, so all in favor? Aye. Right, so the peer review will be Horsley Witten. Attorney?
Sorry.
We're going with Horsley Witten, so we'll get that communicated.
Thank you. So we'll get that right out.
Yep.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
send you the contact information tomorrow.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, any other administrator? No. Oh, no.
We have 423 Harvard Road.
Yeah, okay, so let's look at that and then we can get the
Thank you very much for your time. We look forward to working with you. We'll be back.
Oh, that's true.
Mr. Chairman, I'll get you a correspondence each, about a week before the meeting, just with my thoughts, for board's use, or.
Perfect. Thank you, nice meeting
Great,
you.
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
With the parking lot?
So it's, same today.
Thank you.
Who's gonna work? The UPS truck was backing out and I had to stop and let it out, but.
Is that
They
the-
were-
That's the warehouse?
Storage unit.
We're gonna get a big storage tank, but I don't know, like I said, UPS was backing out, so I don't know if they're delivering more, or if they're taking out, but, you know. But it's like,
So what happens when the cease and desist then?
well, they have to first issue a decision, right?
All right.
And then it's up to.
That's it?
Then it's up to our building
Mike,
inspector.
yeah, so. Petitioner, petitioner.
He jumped on someone over on, what was it, Long Hill Road too, I saw that.
What's that?
Didn't he have a problem at Long Hill Road,
That long thing?
Mike?
Oh, yeah.
As far as,
Oh, the
Cease
common
and-
driveway?
yeah, cease and desist.
Oh, yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, yes. Yeah, I asked them to do that, yes, yes. So they're not in compliance with their special permit on 24.
Oh, so in case the board didn't know, this was the gentleman that expressed interest in the board last, I think, a couple meetings ago, but you were
Yes.
there. So, your name again?
Eddie Basile.
Ed Basile.
Yes,
So,
on Danforth Lane.
yeah, so.
The question,
This is
question
the
on,
40B, you know, this is different than what we
Yeah.
normally see as far as, you know, the 40A, which varies, set, you know, special permits, you know, types of things we're dealing with here was that, you know, if someone feels they're agreed by the building inspector, that goes back to zoning, you know, so.
yeah,
um,
the question on the fire hydrant, well, not the fire hydrant, but the fire, are you familiar with my street, Danforth Lane?
mhm.
Is that a fire right at my little,
Fire pond?
The pond.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
is.
I
It
think
is,
it
yeah.
okay. Because the trucks are there now, are they filling up there when they
Yeah.
come?
Yeah.
Okay, they're filling the
Yeah.
trucks up there, okay. Is that proposed in this development too?
No.
No, I think they're saying they would use
They
one
wanna
that's
use
in
Harvard
Harvard.
We wanna use
So,
Harvard.
like I said, so they're gonna pump almost 800 feet across,
Yeah, they got
across
720-foot
Yeah.
run with hoses, which has to cross Route
Right.
110, and
Into
secondly,
another town.
there's no dry hydrant there, so you gotta throw the hoses in the water and suck up all.
suck up everything else, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I see some real problems with that one.
So would that be a consideration of what's at my development there, used there,
As far as what?
the fire?
Oh, fire is always is a.
Could they pump, what I'm saying is, could they pump from my development where they fill the trucks up? Could they pump and, they can pump and use, and fight a fire from that spot, right?
I would think so. I thought they just filled the trucks with those. I didn't know they pumped directly from the.
Well, they like to have a continuous source of water, because
Right.
you gotta run the truck
Right.
back and forth, keep filling.
Right,
it.
yeah, no.
But on other projects, they would have required, like, we've had a cistern on the
We've had
project where they-
cistern.
where they fill it with water and the water is available, so.
Right.
So there's other alternatives, we just haven't, one, we have to get feedback from the, you know, the fire department and potentially even Harvard. And again, they're working out some agreement, does it work or not? And if it doesn't, then they have to provide a water source on site for
Right.
firefighting, so then they have to tell us what they're gonna do.
When I was on the planning board 20 years ago, we started with cisterns, which basically was a way of every development of a certain size, we, you know, typically got a $10,000 gallon storage tank, concrete in the ground with a pump or
Yeah.
signal system. Because, you know, we don't have public water in this town, so, you know, it's an issue.
That would be my concern, where you, like you said, be putting 8 units in
Well,
a, less than an acre really, where those are gonna sit.
In between you and me, it's that, are we still in, I guess we are. Yeah, I mean, you have modern building materials, which are basically, you know, chipboard and epoxy. And I don't know whether you ever seen the burn tests on that stuff,
Yeah,
but it goes about 2.5 times faster than conventional wood.
yeah, and we're,
So if you don't get it down quickly, it's
it's gonna jump from building to building pretty quick.
it becomes a total loss very quickly.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I'm sure they're not gonna be using conventional plywood in this building, but that's not my area of, you know, control, so. But certainly something the building inspector could look at. But yeah, it's an issue, it's always been an issue. We've lost houses in this town because there was a house over in my neighborhood off of Berlin Road where, they had to fill with trucks and pump them and run back and forth, and I mean, by the time you get all that done.
Us burned down, so we had one on Nashua burned down.
Right. You end up with a shell hole.
They pumped my, my skating rink out. It
Yeah.
was in March and it had melted, and they came over and said, "Whose water is this?" I said, "Oh, it's just a rink," and I said, "Not anymore."
It's now a 5
Because they
o'clock.
they were setting up a temporary basin,
Yeah.
like they brought up a pumper truck and they put like a, let's say a little pool, and they started fill, they needed to suck it,
Yeah.
so.
Well, public safety comes first, but, if you don't have a dry hydrant, then you're sucking up the rocks and everything else that's in the bottom, and you wreck the pump, so.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
So have you read this, so that,
is this a decision?
this is the draft decision, so.
Actually,
So last
George,
week.
before we talk about that, did we have a formal motion to to continue the hearing? I don't know that, did we? I think we had
No,
a motion
no,
to
no.
approve
Yeah.
your, okay.
So, I motion to continue the hearing until October 17th at 7 PM in the Houghton Building.
A second.
All in favor?
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
I thought we were gonna do that after we actually finished the minutes and all, but
Oh,
that's fine.
So this is
Just
just,
to just clarify, the first cease and desist order on April 9th was satisfied by their April 13th action, which was to actually file the form
the
of
notice
intent.
of intent, correct.
So our only action is on the cease and desist order that occurred on April 26th.
Correct.
So,
And what is it? Okay, but I have the board's last name. Go ahead and if you want your agenda, it's on you.
okay.
Yeah, this is what's done.
All right, so 17.
And I'll formally get you on the email.
Yeah.
All right,
Thanks so
thanks,
much. I guess, thank you.
Goodbye.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Yep, see you the 17th? If not
But
soon enough?
if he is, becomes a part of the board, he's not eligible for this.
I don't think he's
Project.
eligible for this particular project, but moving forward.
Just, yeah, just really get it all in my brain and.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, just, yeah.
I just didn't want you to think that you
No.
could automatically participate in this.
No.
We have 5 voting members, and then one, you'd be, but as other things come in, if people aren't available, like out of town, Brian, we could then designate you as a member on that
Right, yeah.
particular
Right.
case or hearing, and then,
Yeah, just more I can learn,
That's great, thank you.
Awesome. I guess, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Did you check the pulse?
That's not bad. I don't work down there.
So then Erica, after the vote is recorded, then they have 20 days to appeal?
Mm-hmm.
And then if they don't, then Pam signs it and then it's a done deal?
Mm-hmm.
So there's been nothing yet. They haven't.
Well, this has to get filed with Pam first.
Oh, okay.
So once that happens, then they,
All right,
they
then
can
they have
certainly
3
do
days.
that, yeah.
It's still operating. It looks good to me. We haven't heard from our editor-in-chief, Kay.
So far, I've put on the, I haven't seen like the little
I haven't seen anything.
tax approval. So in your minutes though, do you do you have any of, some of the applicant statements that he, you know, it's grown bigger than he anticipated, and he's expecting to move out of it anyway, you know, and
Yeah, I do, and
things like that. I mean,
I could certainly add that, information if you'd like.
do you think it's helpful to the, I mean, if, I sense, you know, they probably will appeal their decision, you know, I mean, because otherwise I don't think they're ready to move out and do this thing, so, but it doesn't help, well, I don't know if it's helpful, but, is that type of sort of self-admission important in the decision?
I think it's helpful going back and reading it to understand what was said during the meeting, but in terms of like a judge
not part of the
or like
findings,
another
it's just a-
court
right.
reviewing it and trying to find merit in
Mhm.
that, they'd probably, I don't think they'd look at that, I think they'd look at more, I don't know.
Okay, I give, after our last meeting, you know, like, I mean.
Yeah, it was
how
pretty
many-
obvious.
How many times has he said to, you know, we're sort of going contrary
Right.
to the attorney to say, you know, you know, man, I'm not gonna, you know, I'll be out of here, and, you know, although
Right.
the attorney's like, well, give us a year, well, I'll be out of here in a few months, you know.
I'm gonna be
so-
out of here in a year.
Right, so, but.
Yeah, I can certainly, would you like me to add something, or go back to my meeting minutes and add some of that? I can add it under,
Well, only if they think it's valuable. I mean, do anyone here think that that's,
I don't think it can hurt.
you know, have an opinion one way or the other?
I missed the first part of the conversation.
So, well, I would say, within like the fine, or some of that discussion, you know, we thought, you know, it was obvious that the applicant, the owner of the building was, like, yeah, it's our, yes, he's agreed, it's grown bigger than it, you know, I'm gonna be out of here in, you know, so it seems like it's a temporary fix anyway, they just want us to allow them to do it, but what he would say wouldn't necessarily jive with what his attorney say, you know, but I don't know if it's just, then it's sort of conjecture, so maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be in, but I just thought I'd bring it up, because to me it was like,
Yeah, they kind of admitted they had a problem.
so he admitted a problem, but he also
Yeah.
said, I can't sustain
He
this,
wasn't
it's
he
too
wasn't gonna
big.
have a function there.
Right.
It's only getting bigger, and then I'm worse, I mean, it's not incidental now, it's not gonna be more non-incidental then.
Well, I think his statement that he's gonna be out of there in 3 months or however long it was, I think that's more material than the differences he had with this as attorney.
Yeah.
Because if he
Oh,
was
no,
saying.
no, right, but I'm saying, yeah,
Yeah.
so that's like, I keep saying, no, wow, you know,
Right.
so what do we do, what are
Yeah.
we doing this for? It's,
Yeah.
you know, he's sort of admitting that it's
Yeah,
not incidental, or it's not, you know, but.
Right.
they got big.
I think he was just hoping to get longer out of it.
Right, yeah, so. But as it is, at the, you know, I think it's factual, and I don't see errors, typographicals,
Do you wanna say something like upheld with a unanimous vote of 5 in favor?
on your decision?
Yeah, or a record of vote
Yeah.
on page 6, 5 in favor, with like no opposed, something like that.
You just want the word unanimous before
Yeah,
vote?
yeah, unanimous vote of 5 in favor. Just indicating that nobody was opposed to it.
if it's,
Which section, I'm sorry?
On page 6,
Okay,
record of vote, at the very end of that
well, it says
top
unanimous
paragraph.
up top.
Oh, yeah, okay,
It says
never
we
mind.
vote unanimous, because
Yeah,
otherwise
yeah.
we have to change the title
Yes,
page. but
unanimous, yeah,
Unanimous
okay,
vote
never
in
mind.
favor, all set.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looks good to me.
Mhm.
do you want me to add that one discussion point or no?
Yeah, I have no. I mean, it won't change the signature page, but if you
Yeah.
don't think it's necessary, yeah, okay.
I just-
I think it,
It's
I
like
think it may
anecdotal.
cloud the point. I mean, the point is
Yeah.
that he's operating,
Right.
I guess illegally.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whether or not he's intending to do it for 3 months or 6 months or 3 years,
Yeah, I'm
I don't
not
think it's
breaking the
relevant.
law for the next 3 months, yeah. Yeah.
Well, no, we admitted to that it's right. So
Do
that's
you
fine.
gotta cover
Well,
your?
if it's in the notes, meeting notes, we're fine.
It is,
Okay.
yes.
Yep, okay, yep.
And since it did fall to that
Mhm.
extra page, if you
Right.
don't mind
Yeah.
just signing
No.
it.
So, put, what date, last week?
Yeah, I don't think it really matters, to be honest with you.
Today's date or last week's date?
Since you
We
signed
voted it?
last week, if you could do last week's,
What was that date?
the 17th.
So it was not 8, 7, no, 9.
Nine.
September
Nine.
17th.
Yeah, 9/17.
Yeah.
Three,
just 3 of them?
just 3.
And 2 selectmen here, no?
It's a first. Because in our other 40Bs, I don't think,
Would it be helpful for me to send out a doodle survey, just to sort of get your upcoming schedules, coordinate
I would say
that? Or
before
would you
the
rather kind of keep doing what we're doing where we're,
I'm way better doing it the way we're doing
this way,
it.
okay, that's fine.
Because if I put something so far out and then then we're scheduled, then I get a change of plans, but a little bit further out's easier for me.
Okay.
and if we know, I mean, I just say, if anyone knows that they're definitely out of pocket, just come with that. And then we'll,
It's the way the world works now. Just they look at the calendars in their phone and just do it right there.
Instead of flipping through a book.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Motion to adjourn.
1, 2, 3, 4, okay, there you go. So, motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
second by Kay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, adjourned at 9:09.